The arrival of the Omicron variant in Britain has sent COVID infection cases spiralling. On Wednesday, Britain recorded the highest daily case number since the onset of the pandemic, although testing is now much higher than it was at the start in Britain. Over 78,000 new cases were reported in the UK in that last 24-hour period. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is urging people to get their booster shots as soon as possible.
The wave of Omicron continues to roll in across the whole of our United Kingdom, with over 780,000 COVID cases today, the highest ever daily number reported. And the doubling rate of Omicron in some regions is now down to less than 2 days. And I'm afraid we're also seeing the inevitable increase in hospitalisations, up by 10% nationally week on week, and up by almost a third in London. I want to say that each and every one of you who rolls up your sleeve to get jabbed is helping this national effort. And I want to thank everyone who has come forwards.
The UK's latest wave of the pandemic comes as the country gears up for the Christmas holidays. England's Chief Medical Officer Chris Whitty has warned the situation is likely to get worse around Christmas.
I'm afraid there will be an increasing number of Omicron patients going into the NHS, going into hospital, going into intensive cares, and exact ratios we don't yet know, but that there will be substantial numbers, and that will begin to become apparent, in my view, fairly soon after Christmas. This is a record number of cases. I'm afraid we have to be realistic that records will be broken a lot over the next few weeks as the rates continue to go up.
Omicron already accounts for a majority of cases in London. Public health officials are expecting the variant to become dominant across the UK within days. If you look at the mutant infections pattern across the country, cases have doubled in under 2 days in some regions. That is a major jump in terms of transmissibility compared to other COVID mutations we've seen before. The UK's Health Security Agency has also warned that Omicron has the potential to put the National Health Service in serious peril. Out of the UK population of around 67 million, more than 11 million have now tested positive for the virus. More than 10,000 cases of Omicron have been recorded. On Monday, the UK also reported its first death of a person who had tested positive for the Omicron variant. Close to 150,000 people in the UK have lost their lives after testing positive for the virus since the beginning of the pandemic. The British government has implemented new COVID rules this week. People are being advised to work from home if they can. Masks are mandatory in more public places. COVID passes have been made compulsory for entry to certain venues to show proof of full vaccination or a negative test result. On Wednesday, Boris Johnson said his government is not shutting down pubs, but he says it is up to people to think carefully before they go. And we can talk to our London correspondent Benji Hire, who's joining us live for more on this story. Benji, people are being told to be cautious, and so while they can go to the pub or to the nightclub or out to eat, many of them are clearly going to choose not to do that in the run-up to Christmas. So is the UK government looking at support for the hospitality sector?
Ollie, that's the exact reason why business leaders are furious at the government this morning, because of the fact that the government is telling people that they should be cautious, but not exactly putting in the same measures that were implemented at the peak of the pandemic earlier on, where, if you recall, there was implementation from the government of a furlough scheme to help pay the wages of those staff who couldn't turn up to work, and indeed many grants for businesses too. The effects of the pandemic already on this sector are quite damning. Live, that's the industry body that represents live music providers, says that no shows at performers are at about 27%. That means that only 2/3 of people are currently confident enough to be able to show up to those mass gatherings. Equally, UK Hospitality, another main body, says that turnover will be down 40% this month in December, which is normally the most lucrative month for lots of businesses as we approach that Christmas period. Another big concern for them, staff absences. If you test positive for coronavirus, and we're seeing cases increasing, especially of the Omicron variant, you have to isolate for 10 days. And if you're a contact, you must take tests as well. And that will have a massive impact on those who will be able to actually turn up at work and perform their role. It's not such a great look for the government, therefore, that the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, the person who is mainly responsible for potentially drawing up these support packages, finds himself in California this morning, according to one newspaper, on a 4-day visit, and therefore it's left to his staff back home to try to work up those different proposals. All of this, as you say, because of the warnings from Chris Whitty, the Chief Medical Officer for England, who has given out some pretty dire predictions at that press conference. He said in it that there are things that we don't know, but all the things we do know are bad. Now, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, is still facing significant significant backlash from his own MPs about bringing in further restrictions, and therefore he has to toe the line as to listening to the scientists on one hand and some of his MPs on the other who don't want to see extra limitations imposed. However, he is going hard on instead encouraging people to get their booster shots, and that he sees as the way forward to try to prevent this further spread of the Omicron variant in particular.
OK, and I think Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, is due to be speaking to people from the business sector and the hospitality sector this afternoon UK time to talk about whether support is needed and indeed forthcoming. So we'll keep an eye on that for you here at WION. And Benji, France has moved to ban British travellers ahead of what would normally be a busy Christmas travelling period.
That's correct. In fact, from Saturday morning is when that comes into place, and it's because of what they say is a spread of Omicron in the UK, and therefore, without compelling reasons, anyone who is in Britain wouldn't be able to travel for France for things like tourism and business. Hauliers, I should mention, are exempt. It essentially means, therefore, that you will only be able to go from Britain to France if you're a resident of the country, and even then you would need a PCR test before travelling. About 30 million people visit France every year from the UK. A lot of them are for summer holidays, obviously, but still a large contingency would be travelling in the winter, you'd imagine, for skiing trips, for example, to the French Alps, and therefore, if they aren't able to go, that's going to be a serious dent to the French economy. However, clearly the French government feels at this time that is a price worth paying in order to ensure that we don't see a serious outbreak in France as well. It's similar to the sort of measures we saw this time last year when the Alpha variant spread quickly across the UK and restrictions were put in place in many European countries to stop travellers from Britain. How long this will last, we don't yet know, except clearly France, the first to take this sort of action to try to make sure that Omicron variant doesn't start spreading rapidly in that country too.